as everybody joins us today, please stay on mute, and this conversation would be between Thomas and myself. We wanted to thank you for being here today, and excited to talk to you about artificial intelligence. So without further ado, Thomas, I wanted to thank you for taking this time to join me again for an awesome conversation. Thomas and I have been really in the market looking at all the types of technologies and innovations, and we are focused on the future of work and what are some trends and how is technology helping the future of work. So for today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how and what trends we're seeing for artificial intelligence when it comes to HR technologies. So thank you, Thomas, for joining me.
No, always a pleasure, Andy, having a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Thomas, maybe let's, I think we'll have some people join today that are familiar with artificial intelligence and some are not.
Yeah.
So I wanted to really start the conversation with explaining what is artificial intelligence. It used to be a buzzword many years ago, and what's getting to be more of a concrete implementation and functionality that is truly bringing it to companies. So what are you seeing that is really differentiating AI, and what is it doing today?
Okay, I think people might ask why AI as well, right? I think I think there's an explosion of data today, right? There's so much of data coming in all over the place from HR systems, and HR tech is actually now becoming work tech, right? So there are many more work-related systems as well, collaboration tools, and so on and so forth. So there are piles of data coming in, and I think the big challenge is really to sort of make sense of all that. Of course, we'll get into specifics of specific verticals and domains and so on, but at a very high level, there is you really need to make sense of all that data, and I think to be able to translate that data into something which is very easy to understand, maybe in simple English, and something which is also converting it into an action plan. I think that's really where AI is coming to, because in the past, technology was giving you all the data, it was giving you all the dashboards, but it really wasn't interpreting all that data, in a very intelligent way. So I think that's why AI, tends to step in, and that really step in. That's one. And the second is that, several processes are so complex. If you look at the recruiting process or the learning process, they're so complex. Mm-hmm. And while there is some level of automation that's happening, I think what is it that you can actually predict? What really should be an outcome? I think really automating those processes in a very intelligent fashion is again something which AI is helping us. And I think more, and then finally, of course, what it also does is that it makes the HR organization in an enterprise far more strategic. They can really move away from operational roles to being a lot more strategic in their thinking. Yeah, those are some three high-level points that I had.
I 100% agree. I was actually talking to an executive of a very large company yesterday, and he said that he had to spend over 37 hours just bringing different data sets together to put like what is the result of this before you even got to a decision, right? So AI tends to really work as far as understanding the connections between data, putting various emphasis and reactions to what that is, and then giving you a suggestion of what is the data saying as an ultimate final. So great.
Absolutely.
That brings us really to some of the topics. So Thomas, you and I really brainstormed all the things that we're seeing AI bring value. So it's not a buzzword. These are true AI functionality and use cases that are happening today in HR tech. So the first one that we wanted to talk about today is people analytics, right? When it comes to analytics, AI is playing a very, very big part. And now, even more important than others, people analytics has been a very big emphasis. So not only just looking at AI from understanding revenue and sales and marketing and all of that from a business, what is the AI really doing to tell us about employees, right? And what really differentiates AI when it comes to people analytics is the ability for it to forecast. So it could tell a company what is turnover in 6 months from now. It could tell a company who's about to leave the company before they even leave, right? Based on factors or indicators. It could also help a company do strategic decision making. Like with all the changes that happened after the pandemic, one of the biggest things that we're seeing in people analytics is uh, the question of what type of benefits or work balance is an employee looking for. So
Right.
artificial intelligence could actually analyze a lot of that, analyze what the employees are saying or giving through maybe assessments or data that we gather on that side, and provide the people team with what truly is the best balance, for example, to engage or retain that workforce. So that's becoming a really
Yeah.
interesting model. Plus, with a lot of diversity and inclusion requirements and trends that are happening, maybe we can find out where can we find more diverse talent, or
Right.
how can we attract more diverse talent, right? What are they looking for, right? What is that data telling us? So there's a lot of these use cases. So I just put a few technologies I know of that are doing some great things. These are techs that anybody could get access to, whether you're a large company or a medium-sized company. And that's really what we want to provide is any company should be able to access AI today and really use the benefits from it. But companies like Trend Data is doing some great things. They have predictive models that are pre-built to HR. So if you don't have a data scientist, you could use something very quickly. And then there are other companies like, we have, obviously the Microsoft AI, we have Splash BI, we have, One Model. There's a lot of, AI out there, but we really want to find a vendor that first helps you. So if you don't have an AI team or data science team, somewhere that could provide you with a very easy way to interact with the AI and get value. And then also sometimes is budget. So some AI platforms tend to be very expensive from a people analytics perspective. So that's why a lot of very large companies use them. But nowadays, you're finding more and more companies that are affordable that are tailored to also the mid-cap companies as well. So any thoughts from your end, Thomas, on what you're seeing from people analytics?
Yeah, so I think a couple of trends. One is the HR profession itself. I just want to talk a little bit about that. So I was reading a research which said that it seems that 25% of the companies in the US are actually hiring people in the HR with HR roles with an analytics capability and background, which is quite amazing. That's one area. The other thing is that it also seems that analytics, people analytics is actually a moving target. Because there are lots of these technologies that are coming in, which is making analytics a lot easier. But what's also happening is that the number of data elements is also increasing, and the number of problems that we are trying to solve is also increasing. So it's like a constant moving target. So I think, and therefore, AI's capability, comes to the forefront because people used to look at analytics earlier as some really nice, cool dashboards and reports and stuff like that. But it's gone far beyond it, right? So I think that's one thought that I had, and the other one is really around how do you make it easy for people to use, which I really mentioned a little earlier. How do you really convert that into English speaking action plans, and how do you track those action plans, and so on and so forth. And and there are lots of companies. Another company that I came across by the name of Activate Intelligence, which has some of this capability. So it's a very exciting area, and I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in this space as well, going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the second point we wanted to talk about today, which is also it could tie into the people analytics piece, but
Yeah.
um, there is a big trend on culture being bottom up versus top down. In the
Yeah.
past, it was determined by the executives, and they would actually let the team know, and work on making that culture become part of the company. But today, with the changing workforce, is actually also becoming bottom up culture. And we're
Yeah,
seeing AI play a very important part in those pieces.
yeah.
So Thomas, I know you're well within that space, and you're talking an advisor with a lot of companies in that space. So I would love to hear more about, what are some of these technologies doing today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, one of the big predictions for 2021 is that employee experience is now will now need to be a corporate strategy and not an HR strategy. So I think that's something which has come out very clear. And the last 18 months of the pandemic also has actually brought employees to the forefront, right? I mean, we've had overnight work from home, then a work from anywhere, and now a hybrid workplace, and a
Mhm.
host of challenges for employees.
Correct.
So employees, more than ever, are now in the forefront of things for an organization. In fact, there are several business leaders who have stood up and said, as far as we are concerned, it's employees first and customers second. These are real bold statements that organizations have made here. And therefore, it's about the employee experience journey, and then what feedback are you getting from them, and are you taking any specific action? And linked to that, therefore, and employee experience is now a big area, right? I mean, there are a lot of big players who are getting into it, but to the core of it is really what we would call as the voice of the employee. And the voice of the employee now is really linked to satisfaction of employees, because there is a link between satisfied employees and satisfied customers. So I think people are looking at the whole thing very different. It's no longer an HR thing, right? It's a business thing. And it really, employee experience, customer experience are two sides of the same coin, right? And I just wanted to quote Josh Bersin here. I was just reading a interesting research of his, where he said that there are really 5 things to consider, and it leads to how AI is going to really play, or continues to play, a very, very significant role. So he says really that now employee listening should be a cultural value. That's the first thing that he says. And the second, he says that you need to have multiple channels of really getting employee feedback. And thirdly, it's not just getting feedback, but there has to be it has to be a signal to action. So there has to be some immediate action to that. And fourthly, and it's amazing, how we, how it's important to take a product manager view, rather than just look at data by itself, but feed all the data into your employee experience platform. And finally, look at it holistically, which means that there are cohorts which are impacted differently. So new joiners have challenges of their own. People in different geographies have challenges of their own. So we need to be really sensitive to all that.
Absolutely.
So really, coming to AI, which is really the topic of our conversation, and how it can add value to building culture. Now, there are lots of great technologies out there. I mean, you have Qualtrics, Glint, Peakon, and a number of them. And interestingly, this has been a very hot area for acquisitions, right? And we've seen all the names that I've mentioned have been acquired by some big HCM players, which really shows that, look, this is extremely important, and it's really come to the forefront. That companies feel that there has to be an AI-driven, platform which can really help you, track culture. But I wanted to talk about a very interesting use case, something close to my heart. This is of a company which is a startup by the name of Infido. They started 5 years ago, and the founders were just 21 years old when they started,
Wow.
right? And they have built a very nice, cool tool, and they are incidentally in the Y Combinator program right now. So Infido has an artificially intelligent bot, and it's just all AI driven. And I'll keep talking about how AI is playing a role. And they call the bot Amber, and she is really the smart assistant of the CEO. Mm-hmm. So Amber, reaches out to employees based on their life cycle in the organization. It's a use case I'm just taking you through, so just to explain how it can work. So Amber, for example, if you're a new joiner, then Amber would come and talk to you after 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90, 180, 360, and so on. And typically come and ask you about 5 to 7 questions, right? And these questions are all different. So the kind of questions you get at the end of 15 days is different from 30 and 90 and so on and so forth. And it's a conversation. So if you respond to Amber, let's say you you have a negative answer to a particular question, then Amber would, so the AI engine would empathize with you.
Wow.
So there's empathy which is shown, and then she would ask you a follow-up question to clarify some things, right? And it goes on that way. And then there are other, Amber also reaches out to you in what we call as moments that matter to you in your journey as an employee. For example, when you soon after appraisal, that's a significant moment that matters, right? Or when you get a new role, or when you get a new supervisor, and so on and so forth. It reaches out to you and asks you specific questions related to that. And so, so that's a very interesting journey. And I've got feedback from employees saying that, we would like to meet Amber. They actually think Amber is a person, right? So,
Wow.
so I think AI has been really taken to that level where, it's in a way mimicking a human, which is really amazing. So what are the benefits for the organization, really? So the organization really has several benefits because they are able to track sentiment on an ongoing basis, right? They know exactly what's happening in the organization, what is the mood of the organization. That's one thing. Second thing is they're also able to understand how certain cohorts are being affected. So for example, how are new joiners getting, what is their thought process? What are people in a certain region? How are they thinking? What are the people in the sales thinking? So there's some very great information around the engagement levels of all these different cohorts in an organization. And the other very interesting area is really AI is also able to go deep into the conversations and pull out themes from there. So they have a platform, they have a capability called TechSense, which really is an AI capability which pulls out themes. So just listening to, so it's like separating the voice from the noise, because there's lots of conversation happening. So it pulls out themes and it tells you that the issues that are there are perhaps around mental well-being or around leadership or around compensation. So some of these themes are coming out by just listening to conversation, and AI is able to pull out those themes. And finally, it also tells you about who are those employees who are perhaps disengaged and likely to leave. And we know of several instances where high potential employees have been proactively been approached by HR to be able to address their concerns and therefore stem attrition. So it's very exciting, and I think there's going to be so much more happening on this space as it becomes more and more employee experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Your example, Thomas, I mean, the AI is engaging with employees to get the feedback.
Right.
I'm also seeing a lot of use cases where AI is just plugged into sometimes like the teams or Slack channels of companies, just to sense what the overall communication background is. It's not recording communication, it's secure, it's not capturing what people are saying about each other, but it's actually understanding what is the emotional impact that's in the company, what is really the overall, and then bringing that up to the company so they can say, do something about it, right? Which is really powerful because, if you were to do that manually, it's right?
Absolutely.
So, oh, great. Well, that's awesome, and I love that topic as well. One of the big ones that I'm seeing, and this is really this specific area has been around in the HR function or in the people function for a long time, but really it's being innovated in a very nice way, and we wanted to highlight some of that. But the learning space has also been using artificial intelligence to refine the type of learning or upskilling that they can provide to employees. Really, how some of those areas are working is before, when you had a typical learning management system, you would say, if you're in this job role, you get these series of trainings, and then all of these other ones are optional. And it's up to the employee to either go through the requirements and then also try to find something that's interesting to them based on, the list of thousands of courses that are available, which gets overwhelming for employees. And sometimes they'll say, I'm just going to do the minimum necessary, and that's it. So what's happening there now is, if you use artificial intelligence, first off, you can start understanding the type of learners that you have in the organization. You have some learners that are trying to become more or better experts in what they do today. So they're really trying to hone their skills in a much more effective way. So that's a perfect example of how AI could recommend, higher level skilled specializations for them, right? So you can
Right.
help them. The other thing is there's also all these new areas that are appearing in business, right? New skills are required for them. That doesn't mean that you have to hire new people for those skills. You may have to reskill your current workforce. AI could actually determine what are the best type of people that are doing similar skills that may really help in that reskilling and recommend that reskilling option to those users, right? So that way they're
Yeah.
understanding that might be a good option and helping the company prepare for those changes. The last thing is that also the type of recommendations could also be tailored based on AI, based on what that user is looking for, feedback that's given, plus other people in a similar area have recommended. So if all software engineers, 90% of them are saying, I want to learn this new skill that's up and coming, right? Let's say it's,
Right.
you know, uh, maybe, Java or cryptocurrency technology or whatever that is, they can now know that that's a
Yeah.
requirement. So then the AI could recommend similar technologies to that user.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So from companies' perspective, I mean, there's some really innovative learning companies today. Some are very large. We may know companies like Degreed in the US. They've been invested by Mark Cuban and doing some great things, but they've
Yeah.
done that refinement of learning and suggestion, right, based on understanding of the user, their competencies, and really doing the recommendation. And one of the innovators for the learning space come from a different industry like Netflix. Netflix was
Yeah.
on the hunt many, many years ago of how to use AI to better recommend videos and movies to people based on their type of things that they're interested in, right? And
Yeah.
that tech has now moved to being part of the learning space to really recommend that. Some other companies besides Degreed that also work with medium-sized companies that really well is a company called ICOG, and they are using an AI to not only recommend learning through algorithms, they also can use
Yeah.
AI to match competencies to skills, and they also use AI to actually aggregate a lot of really good content from the web that is free and can
Right.
create massive amounts of libraries for companies without having to pay for it, which is really interesting because there's a lot of content out there on the web. It's just how do you gather all of it? So it's a massive crawler and brings it all together and categorize it, which was really neat. So those are ones that I'm seeing on my end that are really interesting.
Yeah.
Anything from your side, Thomas, that you're also seeing from the learning you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the prediction for 2021 is that learning and development will be disrupted, and fully. And then, so I think and the other thing is that there's a huge amount of technology innovation happening in learning. I think a couple of years back we were talking just about some e-learning platforms. Then the LMSs came in. Now it's the LXP. So things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
So I think. And then AI is really on top of it, and I think pretty much most of the points as far as AI is concerned, you pretty much mentioned. But I think this is going to be a very exciting area, and that's the reason why some of the big players, HCM players, are either looking at acquiring, people with good learning platforms, or are looking at building something of their own. So this is something to really watch out for in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think the next one what we have is a actually very big topic. Probably 90% of the customers that we come about and ask them,
Yeah.
this is the number one area that they're trying to solve, specifically this time of year and
Yeah.
post-pandemic. And that area is really talent acquisition, which we at FutureSolve called talent access, because we always say, or one of our founders always says, acquisition is a term you use in purchasing, and we're not really people. We're accessing people and talent, right?
Yeah.
So our philosophy is always talent access. But Thomas, tell us more about how AI is actually helping companies get access to talent and really reach out to those individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just set some context here. And I think the prediction in 2021 is that we're going to see a war for talent, right? And I think that's really clear. And if you look at some of the research in the US done by LinkedIn and EMSI and so on, it has shown that open jobs are as high today as it was 12 months ago, right?
Mhm.
And there's so much of economic growth. So there are lots of jobs coming out, and huge demand for people. But what's also happened is that the workforce structure is also changing, right?
Right.
Because a large number of people I believe some 3+ million baby boomers are retiring this year. A lot of people have decided to move out of the workplace because it's a work from home, and so the contract workforce is increasing in a very significant way. So organizations now, the challenge is not just getting talent, but it's also about the mix of talent, right? Because you may not get full-time talent, so you need to mentally change your mindset to even having a significant amount of contract workforce working for you. So that's probably happening in markets like the US, which have seen significant economic boom and a lot of jobs. Now, if you look at the rest of the world or many other parts of the world, which is still coming out of the economic crisis, because they're still, the after effects of the pandemic are still there, perhaps the jobs are lesser in number, but there are lots of people available because people have lost jobs, right?
Mhm.
So the talent acquisition will remain hot in both these instances. And clearly, AI has been, at the forefront of this. So there are 4 areas, where AI plays a role, and the first area is really, sourcing of talent, which you spoke of, really, where, how do you source talent from job boards and career sites and social sites and so on and so forth. So typically, if there is a job role which has been defined by an organization, then the AI engine parses the job role and arrives at what are the parameters that we need to look for. Then it's able to crawl these job sites and career sites and pull out appropriate CVs from there, and also pass those CVs, and then so it's only the relevant CVs that are then get pulled into the system. That's one thing. The second thing is that many companies already have, perhaps a lot of CVs of the past lying with them in their applicant, in their application, in their applicant tracking systems, right? And many of these, CVs are probably stale, because they're from the past, they've not been updated. So AI also plays a role there in refreshing these CVs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? AI goes to career to a lot of the social sites like LinkedIn and so on, and then updates these CVs. So AI also plays a significant role over there. So that's the first aspect, which is sourcing. The second aspect where AI plays a significant role is matching. Mm-hmm. How do you match CVs to job descriptions, right? And how do you, so AI plays a role there in telling you that, out of these 1,000 CVs, these are the top 100, right, which fits into that particular job role. So they're able to do that level of stack ranking, number one. And number two, they're also able to remove biases. So for example, now bias in hiring is a very significant deal, all over the world. So they're able to then only showcase relevant parameters which don't, bias the recruiter. So that's the second aspect. The third area is really engaging with the candidate. So for instance, there are lots of candidates. Some of them are active and some of them are passive, based on the CVs that you pull in. So now, there are cognitive chatbots which have been built, which are, artificially intelligent, and they're able to constantly engage with these candidates. For example, there may be some information which is missing. So the bot is able to understand the missing data and ask those questions to the candidate to provide that data so that the updation of the data is possible. They're able to follow up with them. They're able to set interviews for them and so on and so forth. And the fourth area is really qualifying candidates, which is really the area around actually doing an interview, right? So now you have AI, which plays a role in things like an audio bot. There's an audio bot which is available, which can then which can generate questions on the fly based on the job description, that's relevant, and then ask relevant questions, and then get the candidate to answer those questions. And there could be certain knockout questions, like, for example, you're looking for candidates who are only who can relocate to Dallas, for instance, right? So it'll only pick the ones who say yes to that, and then remove the other CVs from that. Likewise, understand the emotional quotient in the conversation that the bot has, right, on the interview, and then again stack rank that. So I think AI, plays a very significant role in talent acquisition, because imagine doing all this manually. It would be a nightmare for any recruiter. Now, there are lots of players in the market, right? I mean, in fact, in 2019, when I visited Vegas for the HR tech show, which happened in person, the number of booths, there were over 500 booths over there, and there were over 100 of them in talent acquisition alone. So it's a booming area. It's a massive market. And there are lots of companies like Eightfold, Phenom People, Alio, Gloat, and what have you are doing, who are in the space. And the other emerging space in this is also talent mobility. One is talent acquisition, internal talent mobility, because a lot of large organizations, so AI plays a role there it's able to identify who are the candidates who could fit into roles that are available in different parts of the organization.
Yeah.
So it sort of it sort of really smoothens that process. But I want to talk about, take another minute to talk about a specific use case, which is really interesting, which clarifies this, which is a company called Map Recruit. And I'll just give you, so for instance, a lot of enterprises have career sites, Andy. So you have, people who come and upload CVs on these career sites. So the bot will go and engage with the candidate. It will pass the CV, and it will immediately tell the candidate that, look, here are the jobs that are available, which are open, and you are perhaps best suited for them. Now, if there is a job which is not available for this candidate, then it will inform the candidate that there's no job available, but we'll be in touch with you, right? And then it takes the candidate to the appropriate role and then says, okay, take a look at this role. If you like the role, would you like to do an interview right now, right? Oh. So you can do the interview right now and with an audio bot, right? You can, or if you are busy, then you can say, I want to do it later. Then it will continue engaging with you and fix a time when a link can be sent to you for doing that interview. And then automatically it is stack rank, and the CVs come into the only relevant CVs come into the recruiter. Imagine this entire process is automated using AI. And so that's really, transforming, the way companies can actually use AI as far as talent acquisition is concerned.
That is powerful. Not only that, but the experience of the employee that's being hired, I would be blown away if I was going through a program like that versus trying to do all the manual process and managing all that. I mean, that is smooths out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Plus, when I do get to the interview with the recruiter at that point, or in a second interview, I am pretty confident that I'm pretty close to getting the job versus having to interview hundreds and hundreds of people and have a very small chance of getting the job, right? So that will actually change the experience completely for companies.
Absolutely.
Really powerful.
Yeah.
And then there is some other companies that I know about, like there's a company called Q Jumpers that is doing the AI sourcing. Instead of searching job boards, they're also searching like Facebook based on competencies and skills. Their AI can actually take a job description and analyze what are the skills looking for, not just the job description. Because people are not reading job descriptions anymore. They're reading the title sentences, lying. So job descriptions are really, I would say, outdated and not really providing the value that they should. So a new trend of actually skill-based employees and finding employees by skill is emerging, which is a lot of interesting areas as well. So then you're hiring based on skill, or even if they can learn the skill, you can hire them even if they don't have that skill, right? So that's another
that's right. Correct.
So that brings us into a really good topic that also plays a part of talent acquisition, but also plays a part in other areas, which I'm seeing is the assessment space, right? The assessment space has been around for a long, long time. We've been analyzing personality or job fit assessments and doing all kinds of surveys and analysis on either the acquisition side or even the internal side of the employee and understanding who's a top performer in a company. But there is an emerging trend there that now you can take that data, because it is data. It's personality data, it's skill data, it's skill validation data. And you can actually benchmark that data against KPIs that the company's measuring. Usually it's about anywhere between 11 to 30 KPIs that you're measuring in a certain area.
Right.
And the AI can actually manage all of that data to predict how successful somebody is prior to even joining a job or joining a project. And
Right.
that becomes really exciting. We're seeing a lot of that being used when you're looking for managers or executives in companies. You can look at KPIs that that executive or manager has delivered in previous roles. You can understand their personality and job fit data. You can analyze it in a predictive model using AI, and it will tell you up to 95% accuracy what that person could do in a company, which is really
Right.
exciting. It's down to
Yeah. Yeah.
just a couple of $1,000s that you can expect if you're hiring, let's say, a sales executive. So
Right.
that's becoming a really big part. A lot of assessments today are still manual, but there are some companies that are doing some great ones. I know one called Aptology. They're a sales assessment, so they measure sales capabilities, and they can tell you how successful a salesperson will be in that area. Other
Right.
companies that are doing that, so like Trend Data is doing it alongside of other assessments. So if you have an assessment today that you're using in a company, you can import the data into Trend Data, and it will actually predict what those look like as well from a predictive model. So that's another big thing. We're definitely going to see more and more assessments come out that are AI powered in the background, because it's all about data, and now it's time to start using AI to really analyze that data. So that's another big one I'm seeing from my
Yeah.
side. So we wanted to go to closing points. I think we covered a lot of the areas, but
Yeah.
I wanted to give a quick summary for people on what we talked about, and
Yeah.
also let you guys know that FutureSolve has a lot of tech advisors similar to Thomas that we work with, and we help companies really understand the trends of future of work. And sometimes we can also recommend a few vendors for you that may be well aligned with what you're looking for. And we do that service, free of charge. We really don't cost a charge for it, because we believe in bringing value to companies and really helping them understand how innovation could really be part of that. So do reach out to us if you have any questions, and we do that. So without further ado, Thomas, let's go ahead and close, but we wanted to have some final notes on what else you wanted to share, and all of that. So
No, I think AI is going to challenge a lot of companies going forward. And so one is the technology side, but I think what we also need to be cognizant is what can happen on the other side of the table at the customer's end, right?
mhm.
I think the appreciation of the customer to be able to adopt these technologies, I think that's a very critical thing. And the good news is that companies are hiring, and as statistics saying 25% of companies are hiring people with HR people with analytics background and AI background and so on and so forth. So I think the ability of companies to adopt technology. So will AI, HR tech and AI largely appeal to enterprises? Will it appeal to small businesses, mid-market? And those are few things that we need to really look out for. But I think as long as we are able to streamline and automate a lot of processes, I think it will, that really is the future. So I think every startup in the HR tech space right now will necessarily have to be AI enabled.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I also see that people teams in companies, as they
Yeah.
adopt more AI, more data, more strategy on how they manage people, uh, the people function is now going to be looked at as a business function.
Absolutely.
Prior to, it was looked at as a compliance function. We have it just to make sure
Yeah.
we're compliant, we're addressing the requirements. But an executive in HR, if they actually take the initiative to use some of these AI technologies and trends to automate those processes and be a leader
Right.
in how to manage people, that will
Yeah.
actually account to some really strategic revenue growth, strategic growth from a
Yeah.
company perspective. And that will give them a seat at the table, specifically on the board. So they will actually
Yeah.
be able to be part of the board. They have a voice.
Yeah.
And they're part of actually the business function, not just a supporting function.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Thomas, for taking the time. Thank you, attendees, for being here today. We really enjoyed it. And we do these every month with different topics. All of the recordings of our webinars are also on our website under Thought Leadership. So if you want to learn any of those or webinars, please check out. We've been doing those for quite a while. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thomas and I are always here to support and help you with your innovation direction.
Thanks so much, Andy. It was fun having this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.